Hey guys, so in this video, I wanted to share with you one quick tip on how to better study or structure your study sessions for IB economics. So I am an IB econs tutor, and I've been tutoring econs for the past 3 years to students who haven't really learned about econs previously. So they may have come from other places like secondary school, and this is their first time, participating in the IB program or learning about economics. And if you are one of them, so if you are new to econs, if you're new to IB, this video is for you. So look, when I speak to some of these students, they share with me that their teachers tend to dive into the first chapter of economics. So they'll be talking about things like demand, about supply, and a lot of demand and a lot of supply. But one common issue that many of my students face is that they are not aware of why they are studying demand or why they are studying supply, or how these separate concepts seem to fit into the bigger picture of the study of economics. So one tip I've learned to identify to really help me and my students better study econs is to really take a step back and look at how the syllabus is structured. So for example, there are two ways to go about doing this. Firstly, you can look at the IB Economics Guide, which is the official IBO resource on what are the key topics to study and how the syllabus is structured. The alternative way, which is the more accessible way, is to look at the textbook's content page. For many of us, at least for many of the students who I've spoken to, they look at, or rather they use Elitra Garker's textbook, the 2020 version, and in there, there's a very detailed contents page outlining what are some of the chapters and subchapters for every topic. So one of the things that I encourage many of my students to do is to take a minute and just look at how the syllabus is structured. For Ellie Chagakis, she splits her syllabus into four main units, right? You have the introduction to econs, you have micro, you have macro, and then you have what she calls the global economy, which previously under the 2011 syllabus is split into international trade, or rather international econs, and economic development. But the point I wanted to drive at in this video is to really understand how the syllabus is designed so that you can study with more purpose and more intent. If you look at how she structures her syllabus, you'll notice that under micro, we talk about things like demand and supply, and more importantly, the market equilibrium. So you'll learn about what the demand curve is, what the supply curve is, and how they combine to form that market equilibrium. And the interesting thing you'll notice is that for subsequent topics, such as government intervention or market failure, all of this is really just outlining some policies on how they deviate from the market equilibrium. So for example, for taxes, you learn how the supply curve shifts somewhat to the left, or more accurately, upwards. For market failure, you learn about how the demand and supply curve start to split into two to account for externalities, right? And then the policies to address market failure is really just about bringing these two separate curves down together to overlap with one another. And that's pretty much the premise of not just microeconomics, but the entire economics syllabus. So what do I mean? For example, if you look at how micro links to macro, in micro, you will learn about things like demand and supply. In macro, you'll learn about things like aggregate demand and aggregate supply. But the truth is, although the terminologies are different, the determinants are different, the components are different, but the truth is that the fundamentals remain the same. For aggregate demand, the components will change, but the fundamental understanding of how these components ladder to a shift in the aggregate demand curve is exactly the same as how some non-price determinants can cause changes, right, in the demand curve. When we come to chapters um, in the international trade or the global economy section, you'll learn that things like tariffs and subsidies are really no different from the concepts you learn in government intervention in micro. So tariffs are really just a tax on foreign goods. Subsidies are exactly the same as what you learn in government intervention. They help to lower the cost of production, and they also benefit certain stakeholder groups over others. The point I'm trying to drive at is that these are exactly the same, regardless of how far ahead you are in the economics syllabus. So if there's one quick tip, I would really highly encourage all students to take a step back and to understand, it is really just to look at how the syllabus is structured. And when studying whatever content or theories at any point in time in your IB journey, just take a step back and try to map this back to what you learn in micro, right? Take a step back and see how are some of the things that you learned in, let's say, interest rates or inflation. How are they linked to the concepts you've learned when you learn your demand and supply graph and how price levels change or how quantity change? So that is the point I wanted to talk about in this particular video. Hopefully this is helpful to you, and hopefully this addresses a very key, very simple yet often unaddressed knowledge gap that I've identified when speaking with students. Look at the syllabus, look at how it's designed, look at how you can map this to future topics you have studied, and always keep the bigger picture in mind. So hopefully this is helpful. If you find this helpful, please let me know. Leave a like, leave a subscribe, leave a comment. I'll be creating more econs related videos based on my experiences as a tutor and based on my common observations I've made from students. So hopefully this helps you as an econ student to better appreciate how economics relates more to the real world and to our daily lives.